Zhong Haiyuan, a teacher at the Zhongfengshan Primary School in Guangzhou City, was being detained because she supported so-called counter-revolutionist Li Julian. During the detention, she refused to admit any guilt. Moreover, she wrote on the prison wall, "Down with Hua Guofeng," the then Chinese Communist Party leader. As a result, Zhong Haiyuan was also classed as counter-revolutionary and sentenced to death. On April 30th, 1978, she was tied up, paraded on the street, and then taken to the execution site to be executed. The soldiers who carried out the execution deliberately fired the bullet at the right side of her back instead of the left side where the heart lies, so that she would not die instantly. Waiting medical personnel rushed forward and brought her into a covered military vehicle. On the surgery table temporarily set up for the purpose, they quickly took her kidneys while she was still alive. One of the kidneys was soon transplanted into the body of a senior official's son in Nanchang No. 92 Field Hospital. Over 30 years have passed since then. With the reform and open-door policy, China's economy has grown rapidly. At the same time, induced by huge profits, the number of organ transplants has also increased astonishingly. Especially since 1999, there has been an explosive increase in the number of organ transplants in China. According to official figures, the annual number of organ transplants reached nearly 20,000 in 2006, ranking it number 2 in the world. Moreover, people who could receive organ transplants have expanded from the privileged senior officials of the Chinese Communist regime to rich people who could afford the high price. Before 2007, as long as one could afford a few 100,000 Chinese yuan, many large hospitals in China could offer the shortest waiting time for organs. In the 6 or 7 years since year 2000, the waiting time publicly declared by some hospitals was 1 to 4 weeks, or even several days. Many large hospitals carried out multiple transplant surgery at the same time, day and night without stop. Behind these astonishing figures hides a serious question. In China, where are these massive number of human organs coming from? In the 21st century today, does the tragedy suffered by Zhong Haiyuan, whose organs were harvested while alive, still go on? The United States is the largest organ transplant nation in the world. It has a well-established national database of organ donors and recipients. It also has a highly effective shared network for nationwide organ transplants. About 80 million people voluntarily agree to donate their organs after their death. At the same time, the number of organ donations from relatives is also very large. Even with a system like this, the average waiting time for organ transplants in the U.S. is still quite long. The heart, about 8 months. The liver, 26 months. And the kidney, 37 months. Why is this? Because the organs used for transplants must be from healthy people. Moreover, the organ's ischemia time during the transplant must be very short. The kidney requires less than 12 to 24 hours. The liver is 12 hours, while the heart is 4 to 6 hours. Therefore, unless they are donated from living relatives, the organs used for transplant can only be from healthy voluntary donors who have just died. Not only that, patients can only accept organs matching their blood types and tissue types. Take kidney transplantation as an example. According to National Kidney Foundation of the United States, the chance of getting a perfect match kidney from a non-relative donor is only 6.5%. Obviously, the probability of getting a suitable healthy organ is quite small. In China, due to cultural reasons as well as a lack of related legal safeguards, the number of voluntary organ donors is pitifully small. Up to September 2007, China had only 61 organ donors in total from brain death. Organ donation from relatives only accounts for 1.1% of total organ transplants there. Although legal and legitimate organ sources are very rare, large hospitals in China never seem to worry about sources of organs. The Oriental Organ Transplant Center used to claim on its website the average waiting time for a suitable liver is 2 weeks. On the application form for an organ transplant at the Organ Transplant Department of Shanghai Changjung Hospital of the 2nd Military Medical University, it once clearly wrote, the average waiting time for a liver transplant is 1 week among all patients. Established in 2003 and closed in September 2007, the China International Transplantation Network Assistance Center was an organ agency for foreigners. It was situated at the Organ Transplant Research Center of the first affiliated hospital of China Medical University in Shenyang, Liaoning Province. Through this agency, as for the kidney transplantation, it may take 1 week to find a suitable donor, the maximum time being 1 month. It further goes on to say, if the doctor discovers that there is something wrong with the donor's organ, the patient will have the option to be offered another organ donor and have the operation again in 1 week. China's Sanlian Life Weekly reported on April 7, 2006, about 98% of organ sources in our country are controlled by authorities other than the Ministry of Health. What are those authorities other than the Ministry of Health? The article did not specify. Before its closure, the Chinese International Transplantation Network Assistance Center disclosed even more astonishing information. The website's question and answer section contained the following set of questions and answers. Question: even if the organ transplant operation is successful, is the survival time after the surgery only 2 or 3 years? Answer: indeed, we often hear this kind of query, but this refers to the kidney transplant cases in Japan where organs were taken from brain-death corpses. In China, kidneys are taken from live bodies. This is completely different from what Japanese hospitals do. Question: is it possible to be infected with other diseases such as HIV or hepatitis after the kidney transplantation? Answer: it is not necessary to worry about that. The biggest problem with a kidney transplantation is the tissue match. Before the living kidney transplantation, we will examine the donor's renal function and leukocyte in order to assure the safety of the kidney. So it is more safe and reliable here than in other countries, where the organ is not from a living donor. The question-answer section disclosed a clear and explicit message. The organs are not from corpses or brain death victims. Instead, they are from living people. In fact, the China International Transplantation Network Assistance Center is not the only living organ provider in China. Here is a phone conversation between an investigator posing as a patient's relative and a doctor in the First People's Hospital of Shanghai Jiao Tong University.
你好，你是肝移植中心，它的号码是多少？转接中，请稍后。
喂，你好。
喂，你好。我现在有一个表妹啊，丙型肝炎18年了，是慢性活动性，
丙型肝炎。
但是现在
我跟你讲，你这个肝移植是可以的。
那我就问啊，要等多久？
工体有天天有
现在
我们今天就来做。
不是，你现在又不是说是有新鲜的，有活的人的，你这个
都是活的。
啊？
都是活的。
The precondition to ensure the supply of such large number of human organs for such short waiting times is the existence of a large organ bank of live donors. Furthermore, this group of people must be under strict control so that their physical conditions could be examined any time. Whenever a transplant patient arrived, a matching donor would be found from the bank. His or her organs would be taken out for the transplantation in order to ensure the organ's freshness and vitality. So what kind of people form this live organ bank? The international community commonly believe the allegation that the Chinese communist regime takes organs from the executed prisoners for transplants. However, this single source of organ supply cannot account for the explosive increase in the number of organ transplants in China during the past decade. Although the exact number of the executed prisoners in China is a so-called state secret, the state-run China News proclaimed in its report on September 6, 2007. For more than a decade, the people's courts have been very careful with and taken strict control in giving out death penalties. The number of executions have been decreasing steadily. Meanwhile, according to reports by official Chinese media, the total number of organ transplants in China during the 6 years after 2000 was more than 3 times that of the 6 years prior to 2000. If those 98% of organs for transplants in China that came from non-medical system were all from the executed prisoners, how could one explain the sharp increase of organ transplants in the past decade, while the death penalties had been decreasing steadily? Was it due to the improvement in transplant technology? Let's take a look at the kidney transplant. In 1998, the number of kidney transplants in China was 3,596. In 2004, it exceeded 10,000, 3 times that of 98. Between 98 and 2004, there had not been much improvement in kidney transplant technology. Obviously, technology improvement is not the reason behind the explosive increase in kidney transplants. Moreover, death penalties need to go through certain legal procedures, such as court hearings and appeals. Prisoners could not just be sentenced to death and their organs taken when transplant patients came. Then, what group of people could be subjected to organ harvesting and their lives taken so conveniently and speedily? Other than the prisoners on death row, who were these large group of people that were forced to live between life and death? For decades, the Chinese Communist regime have consistently denied allegations from the international community that it harvests organs from the executed prisoners. However, in 2005, at a World Health Organization conference in Manila, China's Deputy Health Minister Huang Jiafu publicly admitted for the first time that the majority of China's transplant organs were from the executed prisoners. But on April 10, 2004, Mao Chuinan, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Health, again denied harvesting organs from the executed prisoners when answering questions from reporters. In November 2006, at a meeting in Guangzhou, Huang Jiafu acknowledged again that over 90% of transplant organs in China came from the executed prisoners. Subsequently, on January 11, 2007, Mao Chuinan changed his tune in his interview with the BBC and also claimed that most of China's transplant organs were from executed prisoners. Apparently, on the issue of whether to publicly admit the organ source being from the executed prisoners, there were initially different views inside the Chinese Communist regime. Then what had forced the regime to conform to a single view and publicly admit a scandal it had been denying for decades? Was it because of the awakening of their conscience, or was it being used to cover an even larger crime? On December 22, 2000, the overseas Falun Gong Minghui website suddenly published a piece of news from China, alleging some evil police are plotting with greedy doctors to sell organs of Falun Gong practitioners. It is learned that just one clinic in the city of Shijiazhuang alone has been given 6 organs. Without disclosing further details, and because the brutality in the information was beyond belief, this news didn't get much attention at the time. 5 years later, on March 8, 2006, an anonymous former Chinese media reporter in Japan told the U.S. Epoch Times that there existed a special place in Sujiatun district in Shenyang, Liaoning province, where large numbers of Falun Gong practitioners was secretly detained. These practitioners would eventually be killed and their organs taken for transplants.
您估计大概有多少法轮功学员被关押在里面？
我不能很确切的说这么一个数字，因为经常性有变动，但是在当时吧，所得到的数据呢，应该是有6000人，但是
什么时候？
当时是在2年前左右吧，
也就是2004年，
左右的那个时间里面。
他们是在里面，可能是在被强迫转化、被打、被关押，在生命垂危的时候，然后器官被取出来、被移植、被卖，是可以这么理解吗？
对，我认为是这个情况，但是他们一定是在